Write like a man. Use a typewriter.
Yeah.
Well, the Ark of Gabriel is this fascinating thing, and it pops up, about a handful of years ago in the zeitgeist.
Right.
There was a time when this Antarctica topic was just sizzling hot, and that was the moment. And fortunately, like, I had seized on the research immediately. Like, I really had the opportunity, the time, and the drive to like get down into it. And I had drilled down into as much Antarctica as I possibly could. And this Ark of Gabriel thing along, and I said I had to find some evidence for this. I needed to know if this was real. And it took a lot of evidence into the Ethiopian Tewahedo Orthodox Church to kind of trace the lineage of this object and whether it actually existed. So was there definitive proof there was something like this? I do believe that there was an object revered as a sacred item in 9th century Ethiopia that could be considered the Ark of Gabriel.
Yeah.
Does it go missing at some point in history? Is it maybe taken back to Mecca at some point after the Muslim conquest? I don't know. Yeah. But I speculate that's the only way it could have made its way back to Mecca, to be discovered by the construction team that was digging under the Kaaba when they found it.
Yeah.
So I think it was an interesting story, one that really has many twists and turns involving high-profile figures, from Buzz Aldrin to the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Pope himself, John Kerry, these people that were traveling down to Antarctica. The reported stories of creatures down there known as the Guardians, who Kerry met with, invited himself to meet with. Then purportedly there was an earthquake off the coast of Christchurch, New Zealand, in retaliation for this uninvited, drop-in. Yeah. These Guardians didn't like that. So they were able to use whatever technology they have to conjure up an earthquake.
Was that around 2017 when that happened?
Yeah, right around then. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know how real all that is. But...
Right, I know. Well, and the interesting thing that I had heard, and this is sort of when you get into that QAnon movement, is that John Kerry, being a spokesperson for the deep state, had gone down to Antarctica to plead with the Guardians to not let Donald Trump become president, and they basically told him to bugger off. And then when
they said John Kerry, that's the guy,
right? That's the guy you sing, Birch,
Oh man!
And then he gets back to, he has a layover, I guess, in New Zealand, and that's when the earthquake hits. Just like you, I don't know how true that is, but that is sort of woven into the fringe of that conspiracy theory, and it's interesting stuff. Who do you think the Guardians are, if they're real?
I don't know. They could be ultra-terrestrials from the inner Earth.
Yeah.
They could be leftover pre-Adamites who came to colonize Antarctica, millions of years ago. There was the Heffernan manuscript that speaks of 7 cities that were created down there, almost out of Lego blocks, too. They were plastic cities. They were built out of a polymer that we don't understand, by a technology that's far advanced from ours. But these were cities, nonetheless, spotted throughout Antarctica, built at a time when the continent was tropical, by Martian refugees who came here in flying discs. Now, the funny thing about the flying discs is that the Heffernan manuscript predates the 1947 sighting by Kenneth Arnold at Mount Rainier, where the term flying saucer was coined from.
Really?
So was there some truth or validity to the Heffernan manuscript? I don't know. It could be as far-fetched as the Shaver mysteries at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that, like, Antarctica seems to be the focal point, or the nexus, the hub for so much of the mysteries that we all kind of delve into, whether it's ancient aliens, whether it's Atlantis, whether it's Tartarus and the Nephilim. I mean, it's just it all, and even with like the flat Earth community, with the NATO map and the treaties, the Antarctic Treaty. It's just, that is the most fascinating, mysterious.
Yeah, no one's allowed to fly over it. You think they'd be more concerned about like the North Pole, where countries are actually crowded around it pretty closely,
right, yeah.
Not Antarctica.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
they treat it kind of like the moon, you
Yeah.
know, they
Mhm.
treat it like the
Yeah,
moon.
to an extent. To an extent.
I know.
You know, there is the case to be made for an entrance to the hollow Earth
Yeah.
at the South Pole. And that would explain a lot of the secrecy. You know, even if you go with that flat Earth model, and some of those are really far out, but
Right.
even if you go with that, there's still the idea that someone's keeping the true nature of Antarctica a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, you know, although I lean more towards the direction of a hollow Earth,
Mhm.
that maybe is the middle ground. I could meet somebody who has more of a flat Earth model in mind. That's where I could meet them in the middle.
Yeah. That's
At the
kind of what
idea
I
that somebody's kind of covering up the true nature of Antarctica.
Right. Yeah. There's just where there's smoke, there's fire.
Mhm.
And it's like there's just something there. There's an itch there that everybody is sort of trying to scratch at, you know, and no one is allowed to. I mean, the the ancient cities that predate everything else, the flying saucer mentions, which predate everything else. And then for me personally, I was always fascinated when it came to Antarctica with the fact that H.P. Lovecraft talked about it in at the Mountains of Madness, which, you know, aside from the Call of Cthulhu, is probably his most popular work. It's certainly his longest, and that was 100 years ago. And then there were tangential connections to Aleister Crowley, you know, and Aleister Crowley is infamous in the esoteric community for a number of things, Lamb being one of them, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So there's just like all these different things. It's like, how does he know about, how did H.P. Lovecraft, you know, who lived in New England, I think most of his life in the early 20th century, you know, how did this guy know about this stuff in Antarctica, you know, that ties into so much other stuff,
Good question.
you know?
It's a strange thing. I often wonder if there was some kind of talent or ability that Lovecraft had, similar in the vein to Edgar Casey.
Yeah.
Was this somebody who was receiving images from the great depths of the cosmos, from these uncaring, ineffable beings that exist in the Cthulhu mythos and throughout the works of Lovecraft? I'd like to think that maybe there was something to that. Maybe he was a dark prophet of forgotten gods. But you know, it's just fiction at the end of the day.